The All Black podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black become the best run teams in sport. To listen to this episode and all the All Black podcasts, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere you get your podcasts. This is the All Blacks podcast.
Kia ora whānau, welcome to episode 8 of the All Black podcast powered by SAP. This week we talk to the Kaumatua for the Māori All Blacks, a man who has been with the team since 2010. More recently, he has taken on a wider role at New Zealand Rugby as Māori Cultural Advisor. Welcome, Luke Crawford. Where are you zooming in from today, mate?
Kia ora, Rob. Capital City, Wellington, Te Whanganui Atara, the head of the fish, North Island, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Mate, thank you so much. I know you're a busy man. Your job description is wide, is the different things you're involved in is eclectic. You're across all our teams, but as always, want to start with a few warm-up questions, get to know you. As a young man, favourite international All Black, Māori All Black growing up, who was it and why, Luke?
Oh, goodness gracious. B.G. Williams was one.
Oh, the legend. We've had him in here. Such a legend.
Oh, I just remember him, actually, such a big, awesome guy. I mean, if I went there, it's hard not to go to Cully, the Paikaki Express, mate. I never tire of watching that man. Fantastic. Mate, not so much growing up, mate, but growing up of sorts, mate. Māori All Blacks, many, but Buck. Reed, what can you say? And I'd go to the All Blacks as old George Napier, mate. I love everything that man represents. You know, he lived up in the Ngāti Porou area on the east coast, here in Aotearoa, but from down in the Hawke's Bay was George Napier, so no shortage.
Mate, no shortage, and I know George Napier was a massive part of that Invincibles team, wasn't he? And even though we're talking almost 100 years ago, the legend still lives very, very large, doesn't it, for people like yourself and others?
Oh, yeah.
Luke, I know particularly in a Māori All Blacks environment, but, waita, singing, music is a massive part of what happens in the team environment. For you, when you're on your way, cruising down the motorway in the Big Smoke in Wellington, or whether it's going somewhere else, what's on the Spotify playlist?
Well, yeah, there we go. There's that word eclectic again. I mean, I'm listening to Rob Ruha, Preservation of Scenery at the moment. You know, he's a wonderful sort of R&B sort of Māori, with that old knowledge. I love listening to Rob. Kauriri, mate. Man, those guys sort of smashed onto my scene there, cooled it down, didn't even know about them, mate. And here we are now, so yeah. But I reach right back, mate, Earth, Wind and Fire, Fleetwood Mac, it's easy for me, that sort of stuff.
Mate, that crosses generations, that sort of music, doesn't it? It works anywhere, anytime. What about a bit of Kai? If you were to have 3 guests at your place for dinner, firstly, who would those 3 guests be, and what would you cook?
Living or dead?
Either.
Mum. Yeah, Mum. She's first. Mate, I'd love Mum. There's some wonderful people I've had the opportunity to knock heads with that I don't see. She'll probably freak out. Linda, Nini Morgan from over in Camden. I'd love to see Nini. I don't get to see enough of her. And then probably never far away, Whānau, my daughter. She's down in Queenstown. I get her. Pretty boring, Rob, but that'll be some good conversation right there. What would I cook? Seafood, brother. Anything along there. Hand gathered by myself.
Is there a specialty dish within the seafood? Anything in particular?
You reckon I'd go a bit of power fritters, wouldn't they, mate? I love power fritters.
That'd be good. I've tried my hand at kinners. It didn't quite take, so I'd definitely have your power fritters over the kinner any time at all.
Yeah.
Look, let's get into it. And firstly, I wanted you to talk me through a little bit around being Kaumatua. Firstly, what is that? What does that mean? You know, that role within the Māori All Blacks and also amongst a whole lot of other positions at New Zealand Rugby. What does Kaumatua mean?
Yeah, I mean, the traditionally, of course, from a Māori perspective, obviously the Kaumatua it sort of sits in the different levels of ranking of people in terms of from children to to adults, to young people into adults, and as you go up those rankings there, I say rankings, but those levels, the Kaumatua is pretty much a much respected elder. So you're getting into your older years, and you've built up enough uh, um, sort of respect and mana that people would consider you to be somewhat knowledgeable in certain, and generally. So you would become close to them and they would become close to you. Kaumatua sits at that level there. So that's in the Māori terms. So in the team, of course, the team there, Kaumatua in the Māori All Black team is someone who actually has a really good understanding of life in general, because you're dealing with young men, the Māori world, and by that I mean everything that pertains to it, in most of the different component parts of the Māori world, but also a higher level in terms of esoteric knowledge, say spiritual, as well. And so normally in the Māori All Blacks, it helps to have all of those things so you can cover off all of the things that need to be covered off to make bring the Māori world closer to a rugby team.
And is a big part of what you have to do then within the Māori All Blacks is around whakapapa, setting that up for the players in the team? Like, talk us a little bit around what that is, what that means, and perhaps a couple of examples for different players within that environment.
Unfortunately for me, over the years, it's been a few years now, but I've sort of looked at the different areas of the Māori world that sort of resonate inside of that rugby space, and whakapapa is one of them. Or whakapapa means to layer one upon another. And of course, when you think of that, of course, in terms of people, that's generational. To whakapapa is to be able to trace yourself back to those different layers of and different generations. So in those generations, of course, there's what we call a blood link that exists in that. So whakapapa is the genealogy of a person, and then whānau, of course, is to be born into a family, and so you have that kind of linkage in terms of your whakapapa. And so the interesting thing about the Māori team is you have to be able to trace yourself and your whakapapa back over time in the Māori world. That gives you, it opens the door into the Māori team. And then the other part of whakapapa that's really, really important for us is that the team itself has a whakapapa and every individual has it. And the key for us is how do you then link all of that together in terms of the individuals in the team to actually make sure that you're stronger in terms of the team. I'll give you an example. One of the examples for us around whakapapa is we land, every time we have a new iteration of players coming into the team, we formally land them into the team. And part of the landing process, or the whakatau or the pōwhiri to them, the welcome to those new players, is part of that is for them to be able to actually stand and recite their whakapapa. So where are you from? Who are you from? And most importantly, upon whose shoulders are you standing? Because in our team, we say having a knowledge and understanding of where you're coming, who you're connected to, will make you stronger, and therefore it'll make the team stronger, and also will then be able to line people up with each other once we know where everyone is from. So the guys will stand inside the team and they will recite their whakapapa to us. And it's a pretty special time within the team, actually.
And I'd assume that some people come into the team with a really strong knowledge of that, and others come into the team with not as strong a knowledge, and perhaps a part of your role is to help those players coming in understand that and give them the confidence and the information to go off and recite that whakapapa. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some, at the brand new end, we'll have some of those new players coming in who will, for the first time, stand and recite their pepeha, which is their whakapapa. I think the really neat thing about that, Rob, is that over the years, and it's lovely to have been involved in that over many years, is that in every case, it opens a door that has been shut to them. So different things we do during the course of the assembly and after will open more that door further and further so that they can go. So yes, they might come in for the first time with, but as I say, every case it will open it further. And then there's those who are, all Te Black and,
Yes.
who are people who walk in and they're fluent Māori speakers. They've grown up on the marae, they've grown up in Māori communities, and they're just the most wonderful resource for those and for the team and those who are new to it to actually nurture and help them on that particular journey.
It must be pretty exciting for you when you help someone develop and establish that whakapapa, to kind of see them grow off the back of it. It must be actually a pretty powerful tool to unleash that in someone so that they then can carry that with them when they take the field and play for the people that they represent.
Yeah, mate. Well, look, I'll tell you one of the really awesome things for me over the years is that, I've been to a lot of places with the Māori All Blacks, and people, I'll come home and different people say, gee, Luke, you've been to New York and you've been to the Eiffel Tower, you've been, the Andes, and so where do you get the biggest thrill from? And my answer to that over the years has always been selfies. Selfies. And what I mean by that is that I love getting selfies from the boys and management and the team. And all it says on the selfie is, you'll be proud of me, Lukey, I came home. And it's them outside their marae. I think that's a fantastic thing with their family. I love it, mate. It's not only for Māori. I love it when I get one from over in the Mediterranean of someone standing on top of their mountain and said, look at this, Lukey, and they're with their daughters. And they're saying, I came home. You'll be pretty, it's that sort of stuff there. And I think that there is, it's not, whakapapa, everyone has whakapapa. But of course, Māori, we sort of guard it jealously because it means so much to us and it's so important to us. That structure there, we say, yes, we've all got it, but this is how we do it, and it actually is not just an academic exercise, it's real. It's real to us, so as it is to a lot of people.
It must be pretty cool for you though, mate, because I know it's something that comes natural to you. It's something that's really important to establish that whakapapa at the start of any trip, any journey, any team, whatever it may be. But we're seeing that now amongst all our teams in black, other sports teams, other rugby teams, even corporate environments, business environments, seeing the value of establishing that connection before you have boots on the ground, before you pass a rugby ball, before you actually get into what we would consider a team does together. We're getting this stuff in place first, and actually a lot of people are seeing it as being the most important thing they can do before they even get into the drills and skills.
Absolutely, mate. I mean, just from a team environment, we spend the first 2 days when COVID's not around on a marae, and we do that very purposely because at the end of the day, that's where we can fill the tanks, mate, in terms of the connections we have, the stories of old that actually stir this thing in here called ihi, or the latent potential that rests in the puku of everyone, and to stir that and get it moving and motivated, mate, through just connections, and then to show how to defeat a foe. You can do that better if you actually have relationships and collectiveness, and to show how that actually happens for us. So how does the Waikato, those from the Waikato, how do they connect to those from north, Tokero? What are some of the connections there? What are some of the battles fought against each other, or with each other. These sorts of things here. When you can do that, it starts to make it. There's nothing like a good war, is there, Rob, to stir the whole thing and then get a team united.
Doesn't matter what happens in life. All blokes love a fight, don't they, of some description? So absolutely. I don't want to put you on the spot, but over your time with the team, has there been a particular player or situation where you've been really proud to be able to connect them with their whakapapa? Perhaps someone who's come in wasn't necessarily sure of their connection, but by the time they left the team and the environment, they absolutely did, and like you say, they were able to play on the shoulders of that connection.
Yeah, mate. I find sometimes quite a difficult thing for me because I have to endorse someone's whakapapa. That's a very real thing. So young men kind of know their families. We kind of know, but we haven't really got that connection yet. And mate, I've had a few players like that and families where I can't tick a box and say, well, you have, because what you're giving me there doesn't actually. You're one generation away from the possibility of it, and that's pretty hard, mate. So I've had them sitting there, but I can tell you what, Rob, when they find it, mate, it's like we're jumping for joy, mate. Because what you got to realise too is with whakapapa is that you might think that everything's pointing to the north. We're from the north, but when they go back and they actually make the inquiries and they finally find a link in there. Then you have stories of them. No, he was here, all right. Your ancestor was here, but he actually came from down in the Bay of Plenty because he was in a band, So you have, and then he married in here, and for all intents and purpose, everyone thinks he's from here, but he's actually from down there. And so you go down there and you find people who say, "We always knew you were from here." People used to say, "Yeah, mate, they're from here." But no one sort of went the next step to say, you're actually from here. So I got a few of those that have happened. And, mate, there we go again. There's the selfies for you. You've got a blonde-headed, blue-eyed sort of Māori guy, who knows he's got some whakapapa, hasn't been able to trace it, finds it, and then has a selfie, mate. It's so empowering, mate.
And that's why you see the Joe Moody's and the Damien McKenzies and those sort of boys play with such passion, isn't it? Because they've been able to connect to their part of the country and their people.
Oh, mate, Joe Timothy Moody, mate, that guy. Mate, he's hard out. I love it when old Joe came in. Everyone looked at him and went, I wonder if that guy will know his whakapapa. I wonder if he'll know his pepe how. And old Joe was, that was the year of the World Cup. He was straight out of our team over to the World Cup, but he came into ours back from injury. And when he came in and dropped the old mic drop on his whakapapa, mate, all the boys were, oh, golly. He knows what he's doing, and he did it all in pretty spotless Māori too. So Joe is fantastic, mate. Ngai tu ahuriri, ngai tahu, led all the karakia inside of our, all the prayer and whatnot inside of our environment. So just fantastic,
mate. So good. A thing that is such a well-known thing, so visible, something that New Zealand rugby and all our teams are known for is haka. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the origins of haka. Why we haka? Why there's different haka, and what creates that? Who makes haka? Because I know there'll be so many people who listen to this in New Zealand and abroad that are fascinated around the haka and all the elements of it.
No, awesome, mate. I'd love to. Can I say one more thing, Rob, just about whakapapa, just before I jump to the haka?
Of course you can.
It's probably one of that whakapapa about layering and about generational sort of like leaving a legacy, I just wanted to say in our team, one of the big drivers around the whakapapa of the team or the legacy of the team is talking about leaving a legacy for those that follow us. And the way to do that is to conduct ourselves and to leave a deep impression, so that as we have followed those that have gone before. And when I say deep impression, I mean everyone tries to do that, but then you have like 2005, that team back then in Waikato beat the touring Lions. 2010, a 3-test win. So there are some big ones. And so mine is always about there's some deep impressions that we can leave. We do our best to try and do that, so that they that come after can see it, and you won't just have the sands of time filling it in, so that there's nothing for them to see and follow. So I just wanted to dump that, mate, because we probably won't go back to that. But I'm happy to talk about haka.
Mate, totally. And that's what I remember. I remember the 2005 game, John O'Gibbs, etc., against the Lions. I remember, the series against England and the series against Ireland back in 2010. I remember Norm Hewitt all those years ago in '93 versus the Lions. Like those are my memories. And like you say, that's the whakapapa, that's the shoulders, the players who come in get to stand on. Mate, absolutely. Let's talk about the haka. Let's talk about the origins and the elements.
Haka. Ha is breath, right? Ka, to ignite. So ha-ka is to ignite your breath. And what's on that breath? It's about an expression of something. And so on the back of that breath, an expression of what? Of a deeply held feeling or a deeply held emotion. And haka is really just about the outward expression of something you hold very dear to yourself. So the origins of haka are from the godly realm. And there are different tribal stories that tell of where that haka, where haka comes from. But essentially what we're talking about there is a mode of communicating something that you feel deeply about. And so with that in mind, of course, is that haka often held out as it's a challenge. Well, it might be a challenge, but can I tell you how we deal with it in the Māori and how I portray it within the Māori environment for our team? And that is, it may very well come across as a challenge to another team, but you don't have to overtly portray it as such. What you need to do is connect to that deep emotion, that message that's sitting inside of you, and express that. And if you get it right, the expression right, the eyes right, the protruding tongue, the actions, your stance, the rippling and the tautness of your body, people, you don't need to tell them this is a challenge. They'll see that. So what I try and do is say, what are the things inside of a haka that can unite and connect you to things? So mine is always around the Māori All Black haka. Is a really good example of a great haka that makes it very easy to connect to some very, very important things. And so that was specifically composed and penned for the Māori All Black team by Whetu Tipiwai. And I took over from Whetu in terms of being the team Kaumatua for the Māori All Blacks. And he's passed away now, Whetu, but he left this great taonga or treasure in the form of a haka called Te Timatanga. And all Whetu wanted to say to the people who performed that was where we come from, our whakapapa as Māori, where we should be going to, aiming for the mountaintop. If we don't reach it, we'll fall onto the land. Not good enough. You need to aim higher. Aim for the heavens. If you come short, then you'll be on a mountaintop. Much better place to be. He's saying that we need to be that. And he said, if you can do that, then move yourself from a great young chief on the rugby field, he tō rangatahi, he tō rangatira, so that you can move past rugby and on into something greater as a leader in your family, into the community. And so Whetu left that to us. So every time we perform that, mate, because the final question asked of the Māori All Blacks is, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to embark upon that journey? How much, are you going to stir this thing here? And the answer is at the end of the haka, which says, wairua, with everything I possess spiritually, hinengaro, everything I possess mentally, tinana, and everything I possess physically, I will give all these to that cause. And so we bow to Whetu and think, well done, Whetu, you've given us that. And then he left another one to the black friends as well, but that's another story.
So when we see, whether it be different schools, different teams, performing different types of haka at different matches, and that's them telling their story, their connection to their school, their area, their land. Is that why we see different ones?
Yeah, we do. Not only are they connecting to their team and wishing them well, they're also expressing, which is another reason for haka, is identity, is to express identity. And so that, so connecting to where you come from, who you represent, your fan base, your players next to you, that's all part of that connection piece. And then you're connecting to something that's inherently from Aotearoa New Zealand. And that, which is why I think rugby, it's a wonderful thing that we've actually embraced haka. And I've often said it would be so hard now to uncouple haka from rugby. It's just everywhere. So to see those schools lining up, it's a sight, all right. But I mean, it's not only on the rugby field, it's when a love teacher passes, or it's when, someone wins a prize and brings mana to the school. People will stand. And one of the most fantastic things that I love about all of that is that it's embraced by all of us, not just Māori anymore. Some of us could brush up on some of our actions and words, but hey, that's part of the journey. And but to see those sorts of things, and haka is probably the most overt, and waiata are the two most overt ways of actually connecting to those things. Yeah.
But you must get great satisfaction out of seeing, certain players who maybe come in. There's a lot of anxiety around learning haka, doing it well. Like you say, getting the actions right, getting the timings right. There's so many stories of our All Blacks and different people practicing in the bathroom before their first test match and making sure, they're more anxious and nervous about doing the haka before the match than they were before making their test debut. But then we see a lot of those guys, years later, they're at the front of the queue. That some of them are even leading the haka and they understand why they're doing it. It must be very cool for you to see that type of journey as well, because that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Well, it's really interesting, actually, Rob, because I mean, it's unusual now if someone comes into the team and they haven't had a couple of run-throughs.
Yeah.
Or they haven't used and at least had a go, in the con to get it. And then we just, what I've found, certainly, I mean, the last assembly that we had about half the team were new. And that's always a worrying time as Jingoes. Are they going to be able to pick? There's a lot of rugby content you got to get sorted. But so how do you? So the cultural content and all of the connecting and that there, then how's that going to work? But the haka is one of the greatest resources I've seen over the years to for connecting the team, bringing them together, because you can't not do it. It forces you in to a collective activity, and at some stage you're going to be in the front line, so you better spruce up. So they worry about the maps and all of that rugby content, but they worry just as much also. So what you see, of course, and what you hear, and I laugh, mate. I remember one time in Japan, and I could hear, what the hell's this? And I was in the bottom, of a lift, and that's like 40 floors. And I can hear this, what the heck's this noise coming down in the lift? And it's the boys in the mirrored lift all practicing their fair teno, mate. They're all in the practicing, and I thought, oh, for goodness sake. And so, every day, a couple of times a day we practice.
Luke, you've been now with the Māori All Blacks since 2010, and you do a number of other things. You must have had some great moments in your role. Does anything stick out? Is there any, 2, 3 or 4 moments that stick out as real highlights, maybe little tales you want to tell us?
Oh, mate, I am, and I just and one thing I sort of know that I can tell. I mean, we went to, I mentioned there about stirring this, this thing called ihi,
Yep.
and if you stir that well, that potential there, you get a feeling, or got a feeling in your hair starts to stand up. So we call it ihi. And wehi is that there, we start to feel that. And I always say the next level is then wana, which is a physical reaction. So that's how I explain it. So when you do stir, ihi, wehi, wana, that's a great thing. There's another level to that, that I've only seen a couple of times in rugby. The other level to that, because that's all visible, that's doable and controllable. The other level to that for me is what we call tapu. And tapu is another level which is sacred. It sits up above that. And not many people get to it, but when they do, that's an interesting time. And how you get to a tapu level is, and what the indicator for me around that has been when a player comes off the field and says, I don't know what happened there, but man, and they've scored 2 tries and they've had an absolute blinder. And their family have rung them from home and said, who was that person? Who was that person on there, mate? And them saying, mate, it started for me during the haka, or the national anthem. I felt something in the haka, and then I can't even remember the game. To me, that's another level, and that level to me is I've only seen it twice, maybe 3 times. I'm still thinking about the 3rd time. But that time there was where someone has been uplifted by their ancestors, and they're riding on the back of that thing that we actually spoke of, our whakapapa, when we first came into the team. And so there's those sorts of things there that when you can put those in, that's a magnificent. That was our captain over in Philadelphia. Back in 2013. He's the captain of the team. His family was so proud of him. He was so proud. And he led the haka in Philadelphia, and it just obviously it encompassed him, and it took him to another level. There's that one there. There's the Munster.
Yep.
Munster was, it's for me.
Tell us about that.
Munster, and so Limerick. We went to Limerick in 2016, but just before we went, Anthony Foley, legendary, Irish number 8, and over 200 games for Munster.
Yeah.
And he was the coach of Munster, and he died a few weeks before we got there. And we needed to find some way to suitably acknowledge, the fact that had happened without, bringing in gamesmanship and all of that sort of stuff. So we spoke for the week about how do we suitably acknowledge that. And long story short, we thought, we'll present a jersey with his initials onto the field. And then what we'd like to do is we'd like to dedicate the haka and haka across it, and then we'd like to present it to someone. And the reason we wanted to dedicate the haka to Axel is that I mentioned the haka before about what it's about. It's about moving yourself from rugby into higher echelons to be a rangatira or a chief in your family, in your community, and all of that. And to get to the highest level of achievement. And we thought that Axel was the actualization of what our haka was actually talking about, and he had used all his physical, mental, and spiritual powers to do that. So we thought we'll dedicate it to him. So we never ever realised the impact that doing that would have. It was a horrid night in terms of the weather or whatnot. But I'll never forget it. I mean, after that game, people were jumping over the barriers to come and say, long after the scoreboard is forgotten, we will never forget this. We hadn't intended that, but it was an outcome of just trying to be respectful. As the team, when the game finished and we walked, no one went home. But as we went around that bloody field, the Limerick and the Munster loyalists were all chanting Māori, Māori, Māori. I'll never forget it. It's probably, I find it hard to think past that in any other, to any other thing that I'll remember, but in terms of like really emotional. I mean, we hopped on the plane and people, the next day to fly over to the Harlequins and people stood up to clap. We lost the game, mate. We lost the game. But, you know, so that sort of stuff there is just unforgettable stuff. There's plenty more, Rob, but, you know, that's unbelievable stuff.
It's worth a look on YouTube for anyone who hasn't seen that moment against Muster at Limerick, because it's two extremely respectful rugby teams going hammer and tongs. It's a crowd that acknowledged the moment, and it really is, you know, all the best things of rugby wrapped up into one event, wasn't it? You know, respecting a great man.
I think that one there too, the interesting thing about the haka is I often use that clip and show it. It's up over, I think, 10 million views now.
Yeah.
I often use it just to, you know, like when people say, what do you, show us something? I use that. And I often ask them, have a look at this haka and tell me what you think of the haka. And they'll go, wow, awesome, great haka. And I was thinking, no, not that haka. If you look really carefully in the clip, the management, we all lined up on the side and we did the haka as well. So we're actually doing the haka on the sideline while the boys are out on the field. And yeah, we did that a few times actually over the years. Yeah.
Brilliant. Look, it's Māori Language Week, and I wanted to get like your advice for New Zealanders, for others, around embracing the Māori language and the culture. Like, is it give it a crack? Is it, you know, is it practice first before you do it publicly? Is it, you know, like, what's your tips? Because I know, you know, some people can be really apprehensive about bringing it into their family, their workplace, whatever it may be, just giving it a go. You know, what would you say is the Kaumatua for the Māori All Blacks?
Yeah, all of that, Rob, you know, like in terms of people's apprehension and whatnot. But I've got to say this first, so straight up, first up is, mate, it's so unbelievable, even in this environment here with the New Zealand rugby, the number of people that have, I mean, the Māori, we run a Māori language sessions here, and I think we're up to the third iteration of it. Like, it's just, people are, they can't get enough of it, which is awesome, because New Zealand rugby is high-end users of Te Reo Māori. So that's it's something that you have to practice. I practice.
Yeah.
I practice because, you know, so I'm duty bound to perform karakia or incantations on behalf of the organisation, families at different. That requires, you know, it doesn't just happen. So I've got to walk along, you know, for 20 minutes along Oriental Parade on the way to work and practice. And just to make sure, because like there's some, so with that, awesome to see people really jumping on board. I say at the end of the day, and this has happened just recently, is that give it a crack and just throw a couple of words in there, see how that goes, and then add to it.
Yeah.
So I liken it to crossing over a river. You know, if you're going to cross a river, you want to know where are the rocks. You can walk on water, mate. Just know where those rocks are. So if you want to cross the river on a Te Reo Māori, jump to a rock and then jump across, that first rock could just simply be kia ora, and that's all you have to do. So, but then if that goes well, you can add on and go kia ora tātou. So you go kia ora tātou. Boom. Oh, that's two rocks, easier. Kia ora tātou aku rangatira. So you can just start to slowly adding to it. Is what I say sort of works. And here's how it is for me as well. In the Māori team, we have to, we try and make it so that the language, well, we don't try, we do this. And that is there are a number of us that only speak Māori. We'll only speak Māori to each other so that people can hear it. And I remember when Rajuri, the doctor, and I first started speaking Māori together and would sit down at the lunch table, no one would come and sit at the table. They'd be like, you know, oh, no, those guys, you know, I don't know how to speak Māori. But I mean, now people will sit down. It's not an issue now, and they'll listen. So I say if the language is sort of moving at whatever level, rere ana te reo, if the language is flying, ora te reo, then it'll be well. So it's, no matter how much or how little. So that's another thing. Hey, when you're travelling in the car with the whānau, have a go at just street names, place names, those sorts of things there. But for Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, mine really is that, we're pretty spoiled for resources, but that's worth nothing unless people are actually comfortable to give it a go. And so mine is just introduce small bits into it. And that's the way to do it, I think.
So good. Thank you, Luke. Our partners at SAP pride themselves on powering the best run teams. Luke, do any success factors stand out for the teams and environments that you've been involved in, mate?
Oh, look, I think for me, in terms of success, building strong environments. So for the Māori All Blacks, I know the Blackburn Sevens, the All Black Sevens, the All Black, building that environment so that when people enter into it, it feeds you. We've worked really hard in the Māori All Blacks to make sure that when people come into the whare, into our house, when they walk in, it's familiar to them, they're comfortable in it, they can see things that are known to them, the word whakapapa, the word whenua, they can see these things, and then we can tell stories about these things, and it helps connect them, and so on and so forth. I think the big thing for me around all of that stuff there, Rob, is then being able to stir. Success factors for me is to stir. So in the Māori All Blacks, we treat our team as like we're a whānau, a family, and there's some equity in family. You can't actually be pushing. So it's like everyone's going to get a game. The other thing about the team for us at the end of the day as well is that success for us is probably, yes, the scoreboard is an issue, but representing your ancestry and your whakapapa is a bigger issue. If you do that well, that'll look after itself. So that's how I mate.
Mate, I love that. I love looking at high performance and success factors and best run teams through the lens of whakapapa and connection and whānau. I think that is one of the awesomest contributions we've had to that section. Thank you so much. Luke, I know you're a busy man, a man in demand, much to do. I really appreciate you jumping on board and giving us a bit of your time. I feel like we've got about another 9 podcasts in us, mate, with all the stories and the different bits and pieces that you're connected to and touch on. Thank you so much, mate. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Rob. Awesome.
The All Blacks podcast is powered by our official cloud software partner, SAP, helping our teams in black be the best run in sports. Hosted by Rob Dunne in the Hargrave Street studio. Produced by Carl Thompson from Blue and Ginge, the podcast producers. Video editing by Mac Leesburg, graphics by Western Design, content advising from Andy Burt, and commercial manager for the podcast is Valeska Hoth. Follow the All Blacks podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you get your podcasts.